DJ Limonka is dressed by Farm Aura, located at Phase 4, Pure Drop, Leoba Complex, Gaborone. This episode was recorded at COPA, Africa's leading contemporary music institution, situated at 14 Park Crescent, Riverview Office Park, Midrand. For more information, visit www.copasa.co.za.
Our first paycheck at Squatter Camp, we spent it at Fontana.
That's cheeky.
After we got paid, our first
maybe.
paycheck, we got paid by Ramesh. Ramesh, shout out, bruh. We went to Fontana and spent the same day. Buy 2 liter Coke, li package ya family feast. For the first time. By the time we saw Fontana, we were broke again. You know.
How was Flowers passing to you? How did you find out? Where were you?
I think it redefined depression. First of all, he used to joke. We were very harsh, you know, with our humor towards each other. He used to call me Nyumba, Kinyumba. You know, like, hey, kuni Nyumba. Fanu zera Alex ngizokupeyita. Khona umunye ubaba lapho upeyitayo, break it. Never. So nangaki, you know? And my wife at the time was pregnant when we lost Flabba. So you go to KFC or you go to McDonald's and you get there, somebody recognizes you. Oh man, you know the guy. Now you're like, yeah, it's me. You know me. Hey, what is Scrapyard? Not Scrapyard, Squatter Camp. Yeah!
Scrapyard.
A lot of people used to call us Scrapyard. Now Squatter Camp, Scrapyard, you know?
Ita,
Willie?
Shabuzit.
Ita wala.
What's weird about cameras is we pretend like we've been hanging out for like 2 minutes. We're like, yeah, no gonna go pana hita.
Shabuzit.
Easy.
We do it for the camera.
We do it for cameras. What's up?
100 Jack.
Yes.
Kimnata, appreciate you asking. Wena?
Neki grand.
Coffee.
It's been a hell of a morning.
Yeah.
Sharp.
Yeah, aye. Barry, we need to win bleeding.
Sure.
Yeah.
Alright.
We need to win bleeding.
Let's start from where you were born.
Yeah.
Kokai, Wahola Kai, and how you made it to the scene.
I was born in Heidelberg, Achjefesse Hospital. 1980, 12 November. Cabo 4.
This is the first.
Yeah. Did my research.
Yeah.
So then I grew up in Heidelberg, Ratanda. Obviously, back in the days, our parents were hustling different. They were having shifts, go spanning. So they would take me between Ratanda, Hamagriza, Kotema, you know. So basically, the first 5 years I grew up in a bit of both, you know, but mainly in Ratanda, Mzumbe, Heidelberg. And then I've always been like an entertainer of some sort, you know. So meaning that it would either be sports or music, because I was also raised in a musical family, choral, you know, spiritual, you know, bungoma.
Your name, Hanotsalo, Bakubisa Mangolape.
Nkosana Matthews Nkosi. Born 1980, 12 November, around 4-ish, past 4.
That's very specific.
Yeah, Heidelberg, Achjefesse Hospital. And then being raised by hustling parents, kind of shift, you know, back in the days.
Yeah.
So at times they would move me to Mahama Kriza. So I grew up between Ratanda, Komzumbe, Heidelberg, Likotema, but mostly, probably like 80%, I was in Heidelberg or Ratanda, you know.
Sure.
I was named after my great-grandfather, you know, may soul rest in peace, he's a Nkosi, who named me Matthews, and actually saw me before my mom knew she was pregnant, and say, "You're actually gonna give birth to another me, you know, and we're gonna name him Mateo." And he was known as a Nkosi. Coincidentally, my brother, who was 5 at the time, said, "Can I also name him when he was born?" And then he said his name is Nkosana, which is now so like on point with my granddad's prediction, my great granddad's prediction. So it was meant to be, I guess. That's why I tattooed like a crown on my shoulder as like a something to help me remember, you know, just how relevant I am in the family tree, and also take full responsibility and stay inspired, you know, to lead with actions.
Did you meet your great grandfather?
Yes. Unfortunately, he passed when I was, I think, 5. A great man, very intelligent, very wise. Obviously, at that time, I was too young to comprehend, but then I've heard stories about him. Because he used to like cycling.
Sure.
So he'd always say, yeah, he's great. I actually went to his place of rest, his grave, to be more specific, just like literally a week ago, you know, to ask for wisdom and comprehension, because at times you get blessed, but you don't know exactly how to receive and multiply the blessings. Because we keep on praying for the blessings, and at times they show up, and Limonga calls you and say, "Ndwana, let's do a podcast," and you're like, "I keep busy," until that's the break, you know. So you need to learn comprehension. Even at times things appear small until they big. So you need to have proper energy, you know, and alignment psychologically to understand, you know, what's going on in your life and your breaks, your moves. So don't only pray for blessings, you know, also pray for comprehension, also pray for wisdom to can receive them, you know, and be able to, because they can also be manipulated negatively and positively.
By who?
You. And mainly it's you.
Okay.
It's your journey, you know. We normally then weaken our infrastructure, then have outsiders now having more influence than we do. Either maybe fear, wrong people, wrong energy, misalignment, misjudgment, you know, lack of trust, self-trust and self-belief. Because if you don't believe in yourself, then I'll tell you, this podcast thing of yours won't work. And then you're like, it's the 10th time I hear this, so clearly there is a sign, you know, and I need to start following through. So you need to be a little crazy, you know, for you to be able to explore and also execute the genius.
Are you a spiritual person?
Highly spiritual. I'm more of like I feel like we are here to serve that, you know, in human form. I think that's what we're about, you know. That's why I mentioned the family tree and the importance of it, you know. If you can follow maybe how you were named, how you were born, how you were raised, you know, the stories behind that, I think we all need to engage with our parents and find out exactly. In that, you'll know where you're going. And once you know that, it's difficult for people to put you off track. You know what I mean? Because if you are raised with that mentality, you know, I mean, you hear Kanye West stories, you know, about how his mom raised him, why he named him that and all of that. He knows. You also have to believe, but you can't believe something you don't know. But if you understand and know yourself spiritually, it gives you balance in this terrible world you're living in right now. And I feel like once you have that properly taken care of, it's easy to navigate through anything.
It feels like you know who you are, and how did you get there? Or how's the relationship with you and your father? Because my assumption is dads can mold men.
Yeah. My dad was a philosopher of some sort, and I'm glad I got to understand while I was still young, you know, that education is not only academic. He was highly educated, you know. He was a philosopher of note. Some of the things he said to me when I was like 10, 15, 20, even at 35, I'm still processing them. You know, through experiences like, hey, this guy, you know, he was always ahead of his time because he allowed his purpose to be central in his life and how he lived his life. So he was very calm, you know, not dealing too much with the past or the present or the future. He was always in the present and like, nah, relax, Antoine. Relax. So like, each time I'm trying to push something and you know. So you're right. Dads are that important because obviously they carry that huge aspect, you know, in your life in terms of your origins, you know. So the closer you are to them and the open they are also to you, because at times you can be closer to them, but they're not open. They have to be willing to be vulnerable with you and literally give you both feminine, you know, and also like manly, you know, approaches and in terms of aligning you on how to navigate through life. But if they're focusing on making you a man in typically in African terms, I think then there will be some sort of a lack, you know. I don't want to specify that is the way, but I'm saying balance is important. So my dad was very vulnerable with me. We would sit and talk and he'd tell me, nah, don't worry, I did that when I was your age, you know. Relax, you're on the right, you're actually ahead, far ahead, you know, and you are more talented than me, you know. So the fact that he would admit certain things and allow me to soar, you know, without fail was amazing. So I got to know who I am through him and both, and my mom as well, you know, but I do know who I am, you're right. And it's something that's been happening since I was young because there's been points where I was attacked, but mildly in the family, you know, when they used to call me Madcap Kontlu.
What does that mean?
Because I was different.
Okay.
So you know, like this one, don't have conversations with this one. You're gonna end up crazy. The questions they ask and everything, I was that type of a person, you know. Different, like in terms of upbringing, in terms of how I approach life, my explanation studying tour, my definition studying tour was odd. So I've always been a creative in a very academic family. So I was odd from the beginning. So now when you shine above others, you're not apologetic because you're used to being like this, you know? So it's important to know who you are because at times you dumb down just to fit in and only to find that you end up in spaces where you're not supposed to be.
That's dope. When did you meet rap?
I met hip hop, I think late 90s, but I was exposed to music. My dad was a vinyl collector. My uncle was also a vinyl collector. The LP,
Sure.
the record. So I was exposed to music. I grew up listening to both Peter Frampton, your Commodores, Jonas Gwangwa, early days, Sankomota, Stimela. Kamazu was my favorite artist, by the way. That's why I started writing as a rapper in melody. Because I couldn't rap straight. I couldn't hear it properly. So I had to, it's my house, got that, it's played at Veleksha, Pampama. It has to have like notes, you know, for it to make sense to me. So in short, I got introduced to hip hop in the late 90s, but started being a house DJ when DJ was called, house was called International.
Yes. I remember
in the early 92.
Yes.
Started being a DJ through a teacher of mine who was a vinyl collector and he used to host his friends and never had somebody to play music. He had to play music and host. So he's like, nah, man. You want to learn this thing? Play there. Mixers, everything, 1210 MK2s. Yes. So that's when I started playing. Then through Chicago House, Common Sense was rapping on most of the beats.
Yes, I remember even the remix, Santa Savage.
Yes. So then I was like, okay, I can do this thing. You know, reciting his lyrics, then started writing my own on top of house tracks. Then I met a cousin of mine called Tsepo, who actually now formed a proper understanding of what hip hop is. This was probably 94, 95.
We need to sit down with Tsepo. He must break it down to us. And I'm in for real. Yeah. So, between house and hip hop?
Yeah.
What's the journey there? Like you started ka house, so
Yeah.
then you're a DJ.
Yeah.
Unul DJ man.
I've always been Boza, funny.
Yeah.
The name Boss, it was the Boss in the beginning. I was 5 when they named me the Boss. Maskautung, I was the youngest one. There were no cups. Remember, Boy Scouts had cups. I was the only young one. So they had to take me with the bigger boys.
So it's a football name.
It's Kema Scoutu.
Okay.
Ne? As the boss.
Okay.
Because I got bent mtohong da.
Okay.
And when I was about to cry, they're like, the boss don't cry, the boss don't cry. So I was like, okay, you know. So the boss name stuck. And then in football, when I started playing football at 6.
Okay.
And then they're like, boss. And then when LA Beat released a song called Boss of the Road, it then became Boss of the Road, Kobolo. And then late brother's friend, his name is 50 Hloni, and thank you, Hloni, for this. May your soul rest in peace. I think there was a song that said, hey, Minangi Boza, Ata's song. He then called me Boza. I think this was like 91, 92 or something. Then the name Boza stuck since then. So I've always been DJ Boza or DJ Boss or the Boss, you know. But the relationship between house and hip hop, yeah, like I said, I met Common through house, who introduced me to rapping over house beats. Then my cousin gave me a proper perspective of what hip hop is, and I followed that track. But for me, it was music. It wasn't genderized or there were no lines. Just music. At that time, for me, it was music. And my dream was becoming an entertainer, whether through football, music, hip-hop, or let me just say between football and music.
When did you meet Squadra? Or how did the 7 or 8 guys that we know?
This cousin of mine, Tsepo, was best friends with Slicker. They went to school together. Him, Dinudi High School, him, Slicker, Tsepo, Slicker, and Infa. So he introduced me to, when he started feeling that, this boy is getting dope. You need to meet my boy Sia. He's a freestyler, he's good. So I met Slicker. And at the time, I was introducing Nemza into the hip hop scene.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's from my hood in Rasta.
Is it? So when Nemza...
We've known each other since grade 1, grade 2.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's also crazy.
I know, trust me, I know.
Yeah, that's my boy. I love him to bits. So Infa introduced me to Slicker. Slicker was Smex's friend. And Smex stayed 3 houses away from Nish. Nish went to school with Flaba John O. You know, and the manager, Sbu, was is the late Nish's big brother.
Is it?
Yes.
Now that you say it,
100. So now I went to YFM with Nemza. We won Rappers of the Week, Rappers of the Month, and Rappers of the Year. So these ones, mostly were like, hey, these guys, we can't compete with these guys. You know? And that's how we formed Squadra Camp. And then we went to Sugar Smex's 16th, it was Sweet 16. And then we went to Flaba's 21st later, of which it's exactly where Squadra Camp now was formed. And we were around there looking for names. And we're like, we're in the Squadra Camp. And Squadra Camp. And it was sort of relevant at the time because that's what hip-hop was in the music industry. A Squadra Camp, Alexander right next to Sentin, where like the high class people are on some, hey, these guys are a coward, you know. And then these ones are like, we are coming there. You know, that's where Kwaito gospel was, that's where hip hop was, and hip hop was us in the game. You know? So we named it Squadra Camp.
How many were you guys at the time?
7, was 9 of us, including Gedon. Well, obviously me, Infa, Slicker, Nemza, Sugar Smex, Slicker, and Nish. And then there was Gedon and Master Sip at the time. Master Sip and Gedon left. Then we remained 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at what point did you guys think, okay, I think what was the defining moment
I think since the beginning, for us coming from Ratanda, for them, but it was a channeled vision, but from different places and backgrounds, you know. But when we met, we realized that we have actually an identical goal, common goal. So we decided, you know, since record companies don't take this hip hop thing serious, to them it's almost like a hobby thing. And to us, we think we can turn it into a career. And we never really cared what happened, which is we loved it, you know. So we decided, let's raise funds, you know, and make this thing work and make this dream become a reality. So basically, we started selling Magwinya in Yondale Alex.
Who can cook?
Master Sip was his mother used to sell a Magwinya.
Okay.
Yeah. So then we used that skill set, like Antoine, let's do this thing. And then in terms of socializing, Smacks was famous at the time. I was a child star.
Yeah.
So then we decided to throw parties at Slicker's House 100 in Klipspringer and at Smacks' house at 9. Then have all these local guys that we knew that had a future in hip hop, you know, that we believed in, that we were pushing this hustle thing together, like your Hidden Force, who were around the East End. Bo Neville, the Mike Devil. So we'd host events, you know, literally book artists, but you know, then even 50 Rand was a thing, you know, but then like make people pay $50 at the gates. There were no hip hop parties, and there were a lot of people who loved hip hop. There was a niche. So people would come through and we take that money, save it, maybe host another gig, and then maybe buy tape deck where we could now at least record ourselves, and then made the Squatter Camp Volume 1 mixtape that had a lot of different artists. Sell that. You know, the profits also buy studio equipment, you know, mics, mixers, and all of that stuff. So I say from the beginning we knew, you know, that this thing could be, but we just didn't have means, you know, and people who believed in corporate spaces who can make it happen quicker for us.
How was the process of Kuku function?
I think there was already light. We had commercialized our dream already, because Rau Rau and Manyisa was like a big break for us. The Rest Shot There actually was one of the first songs in our first album, Squatter Campaign, which was underground, that got radio airplay, and we managed to raise funds and shoot a video for it. So there, I think the commercial aspect, let me say the business aspect of the game, you know, we had a bit of an understanding. There was already light, and we had content. But now, because we wanted to go national and never had funds, so we were like, maybe because now we had won an award with Cut and Joy. You know, 2 awards. We had a Metro FM award and a Summer award. So already record companies were calling and saying, "Ay, ngat," you know. We had sold Gold, which independent was 5,000 copies back then from the boot.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we knew people. We knew Faisal, who was owner of Reliable, if I'm not mistaken. We had relationships with Look and Listen, CD Warehouse, you know, in Rosebank. So we had like a couple of connections, and like more people believing, and YFM was there like pushing us big time, and we were already performing at YFM gigs, Opikopi, Woodstock. So record companies were seeing the light, and they were starting to approach. So we felt we're getting bookings in Cape Town. First of all, there's 7 of us. They can't afford to fly us and pay us at the same time. So we can't, people are on Facebook and maybe like even contact, people would call and say, "Hey man, we want you guys this side." But we're like, how are you gonna get there? The only time we actually went far was Moy River, of which it was a Flux Festival. They booked us there. We never got paid because we had to pay transport. But like then you like, at least for us it's out of reach. Now we're getting there. We're getting recognized. Opikopi as well. Like you have to pay for petrol.
Yeah, it was major.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh guys, we're not only 1,000." So instead of splitting it like Royaka.
How do you even split 1,000 and listen?
You know, our first paycheck at Squatter Camp, we spent it at Fontana.
That chicken.
After we got paid,
Yeah, go
our
make
first
me.
paycheck, we got paid by Ramesh. Ramesh, shout out, bruh. We went to Fontana and spent the same day. Buy 2 liter Coke, li package ya family feast. By Rajam Kholwaruna for the first time. By the time we saw Fontana, we were broke again. You know? So it wasn't even about the money.
I know.
You know, it wasn't even about the money. It was this thing that wakes you up at 3 a.m. And you're like, hey, I've got a verse. And you write a verse. And you can't wait to meet Slicker and kick this thing because there was no TikTok, there was no social media back then. You know, so you had to be, it was like literally like human contact all the way. You know? So we it was spiritual, bro. Like I couldn't wait. Even in a taxi, I'm reciting it because I want to kick it from top of the dome. So when I get there, I want to kick this for Slick so he can put me in that song of his that he was telling me about. Because it's the same concept, you know? And when I rap to Slick, it's like, oh, for me that are like going platinum. Like, oh, I killed it.
So, record companies called, and which deal was better to sign to move to next level?
I remember we had EMI, we had Gallo competing.
And then being signed was like,
Yo,
it was a win.
dude, it wasn't even, it was unreal.
You didn't care what the contract says. Let's sign.
Smooth was like, no. Because Smooth used to be a marketing manager for Standard Bank.
Ah,
So he actually quit his job.
wow.
And like, I see something here. You can turn this into a multi-million dollar industry.
Sacrifices.
Yeah, and then for us was like, Muneruna we used to decipher, Mune like,
Yeah.
Kokasi was famous, bruh. When I'm like walking, and then funny, I played disky. Most rappers played basketball. So what disky when I get to gym, I start, I'll shy say one. Ask Jimmy, okay, three line, you know? So for us, that was it. And we thought like the bigger that gets, the better. Now learning about how this could become a career. And like you wouldn't do anything else but this and not find a job, and this could actually be a job and something that will be able to take care of your family and even become a legacy. Wasn't even part of the vision. You know, not to say we were short-sighted, but that's all we knew. You know? So to tell you the truth, getting signed for me was like, Sbu is taking his time. He's thinking for himself. We might just lose this thing, you know? And he had a vision. We had passion. That's all we had. And so choosing between EMI and Gallo, I think was more of like a connection. Because Sipho Tole was a visionary. He saw this thing and he actually sat down and broke it down on how it would work. And it was amazing for us. And obviously there and there, there's empty promises, you know. And you get hurt, obviously, as time goes. So you get to realize, son. But he had a vision. He had it figured out. It's almost like he was waiting for something like us to show up in his path, you know, for him to execute. So we showed up. Also, it's not us being at our best only, but it's also timing, you know, God's timing. And we signed because of the connection, I think, you know, he with the dream that we had and the vision that he had, and also the vision that Sbu had, that we can now afford to go to Cape Town, but there is demand. But Gallo can be that middleman, you know, that actually takes care of those bridges for us. And yeah, that's really silly. We got to the other side, then we could afford to go to Cape Town on tour and push and realize that we actually have a market. Like we just used to going to Soweto and like people recognize when you go to Cape Town at the airport. Or actually the first time we went to Cape Town, we were driving, we did a coastal tour. And like people can recognize you, McDonald's, you know, when they start giving you per diems, what they call per diems, like, they're giving us money to buy food. while they driving us around to go to radio.
They still have to pay us.
They wanna, what? We're gonna be rich. So you go to KFC or you go to McDonald's and you get there, somebody recognizes you. Oh man, wow, you know the guy. Now you're like, yeah, it's me. You know me, like, what is Scrapyard? Not Scrapyard, Squatter Camp. Yeah!
Scrapyard.
A lot of people used to call us Scrapyard. Squatter Camp, Scrapyard, you know?
Sure.
So it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me or in my life, seeing the other side of your dream, you know, in a different space where you are like in KZN and somebody recognizes you and he knows exactly what you're about. You know, like, I know your song. This verse touched me, like, you know, Sunshine speaks about women abuse and my mother went through this. Like, what? You're in Cape Town, bro. How the hell did you get hold of that thing? You know, and I went to City Warehouse and I got it there. So Carlo helped us with that, you know, in terms of giving us a proper infrastructure, you know, to get by.
So from Cut and Joint, the next album was Mkuku Function, right?
Function.
So Mkuku Function drops,
Yeah.
and your life changes, literally.
Big time.
How was the feeling? And now there's money on the table.
Yeah.
Bookings are flooding in. Obviously, you are expecting a royalty check now from the record sales, even from music being played on radio, and the first biggest hit in hip hop, obviously,
Yeah.
Moya,
Yeah.
undeniable.
A classic.
Like,
Yeah. I think I lost it there, bro. There's like blurry moments when I sit and try reminisce. There's moments I can't reach. I literally lost my mind in some points because it literally blew me away, you know, and how quick it happened. You know, when you hustle for like years and years, and then it happens when you like, all right, guys, we need to persevere. Let's keep pushing. And then it happens then when you program yourself that it's hardships. You need to push through this thing and it happens. You're never ready. One day you go to the mall and like people are just looking at you. This one has got nice kicks. Then the next thing like, you know, like you're not trained for this shit. You know, you don't even know how to react. You don't even know how to feel. You know? So it's you get shocked. And while you get shocked, life goes on. You have your next interview, your next show, your next CD shop signing session, your next recording, now a feature. Now man doesn't know who you are. Now this guy's like, hey man, hey, come in, boy. I'm like, yeah? What? This guy was like beyond being a role model to me. You know, it was a dream. And the fact that I'm seeing him live and he actually recognizes me, there's so many things to process and yet you don't have time to deal and process. You know, so I think, I'm not even ashamed to say, I think in some moments I literally lost my mind. And when people are like, dude, at some point you were fucked, I'm like, cool, at least I learned something from it, you know? So it was confusing, overwhelming, joyous, inspiring, saddening at times, because now you get to travel a lot and you fail to balance your time with family at times because of contractual issues. You need to be in certain spots. I mean, I remember I also lost my granddad and I couldn't be there with the family. And he was one of the closest people to me. And now you need to learn to balance. And also now you're developing a fan base, you meet people, you're expected to smile. You can't. You're still processing something, but you have to. And then you do it. So you become two people in one body. You know, now there's that spiritual life. And then there's that, you also need to be practical. You know, and at that age also, you're not solid in terms of values. You're still discovering who you are. You're still discovering your dream and what the industry is about. It's also influential. There's certain people you have to befriend to keep this dream rolling. They're not good energy for you. You don't know what's good energy because they bringing in the money. Money is energy itself. Confusing, bruh, and overwhelming at the same time. So when artists in that breaking point, they lose it a little bit, I don't blame them. I feel like as a country also, it's our responsibility to bracket them and shed light. Because, I mean, I know doctors who actually die from drug abuse. So now if you come here and tell me, Scott is doing this, Scott is doing that, like, it's messed up. It's messed up, and I really understand. But this doctor guy, he actually went to school for 7 years. He knew exactly what he was becoming. Academically, psychologically, he's in that space. He's got mentors close to him and everything. This one was just hustling, doing what he loves, and then in a week, bruh.
Life changes.
In a week.
Can't go to a shopping.
In a week. I don't know where you'd get training to develop a certain level of maturity to deal with the pressures, the expectations.
The fame.
It's insane. It's insane. So I think I also had my imbalances there and there, but it's life, and you have to be happy that it happens at an early age so that you can be able to bounce back, recover, learn, be wiser, you know.
You know, it's hard for me to believe that you, especially you, lost it, because I think I met you in 2005 at the record store.
Yeah.
And when we met in the group, you were the hyped one.
Yeah.
And the first one who said what's up to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And somehow I knew that I know you.
Yeah.
Before I even go further, then the last time I saw you, I bumped into you, go Braamfontein.
Oh, yeah.
I was with Zondi.
Yeah.
Remember that day?
What a moment.
We bumped into each other. We hung out the whole day, had lunch, you know. And I'm like, yeah, man, this is the guy.
Yeah.
Hence, when I started this podcast, you're the first person to call.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate that, bro.
For you to tell me, Jorge, you, the person that I think we balance.
Yeah. It happens to the best of us, bro. First of all, humility is something that I've always had because I was raised in that kind of environment. I had like a loving family, very huge, both sides of the families, balanced, spiritual, very humble, warm, respectful, you know, values on values, you know. And I'm talking discipline, you know. But the industry is a different demon. It's not your mother. It's not your dad. That thing is not your uncle, you know.
Crazy.
That's why there has to be a certain level of cruelty you have for you to be successful. And I've been trying to fight that a lot, and you struggle. Once you become honest and be about values, you lose money, you lose opportunities, you lose platform, you lose stages, you even lose the music. You know, I mean, it's the reason why we lose brothers like Bocheba in them, you know, because there's less truth being exposed than the bullshit. So some people struggle to stomach it. And also they can't be honest about it and be transparent, because once they know where you fall, you fall. So it's hard, you know, getting the balance. For young boys, guys, it's a blessing that there's your Oskidos. There's us, you know, who are willing to align, you know. There's Boslika who are doing great in that, mentoring. Do that. Get the balance right. It's terrible. People don't understand. People see the other. Just yesterday, I took wifey to a gig, and we performed at 11:30, right? Actually, didn't perform 11:30. We were supposed to perform 11:30. I think performed at like 12. And I had this at 8. I leave 1 hour out. So I had to wake up 2 hours before. I got home at 2. Have to be here. And she said, Aish, I'm going to accompany you. And she had to wake up. And she said, while I was taking a bath, I said to myself, is this what he goes through? And he has to go there, smile, have great energy, like it's his first thing to do in a week.
I'm so sorry. I'm part of the rebel, but
You are part of greatness. You know, that's what I said. That's what I meant when I said we need to win bleeding. She said to me, love, this is hectic because I'm not promoting it, but I've got to understand why people get tempted to do drugs in the industry. Because now I'm feeling this way. And this is only one night and one morning. What if you had 2 gigs? What if you had 3 gigs? And when you reject gigs, people say, why pon haba tlotla mafikeng ubani? He'd rather be in Durban. Or when you take more gigs,
one you'll mess up on one
you are greedy.
or 2.
But also you have to understand the human aspect of it. You want to reach as many fans as possible. You want to make people happy. Because for me, music is like, I see myself as a vessel of positive energy, whether it be healing. I see myself as medicine, as a solution. So if I go to one place, I feel responsible for the lives lost in some portions of the world. It's what keeps me going in the industry. That I've had somebody who was a doctor said, Yolandela verse changed my life. I was suicidal at the time and I had lost my mom. My dad was sick. I had passed my matric, never had means. It made me go back, rewrite, got scholarship. Now I'm a doctor. He bought me a Rado watch and said, this is the time you spent writing that verse. So you see, such things are the things that even when it doesn't make sense, even when somebody says, this is bullshit, to me, it'll always do internally. When I have internal conversations and I say, I'm going to wake up and do this thing. I don't care. Ulimonga now has decided, that episode cut. It's okay. So it's those type of things that we carry as artists, and people see the face of it, but what happens behind is like looking at a tree losing its leaves, but you don't know what's happening underground. It's still keeping the water. It's still keeping moist, you know? Different type of mechanism that I feel is not exposed to the people, because the industry keeps selling people dreams, but people don't know exactly what's going on. It's life, this thing. It's just that it's in front of camera so everybody can see it. Everybody's got an opinion and a perspective. But doctors go through these things. They're just not scrutinized, you know? This is life. What hobos goes through, homeless people go through, we go through same emotions, but it's just different levels and different platforms.
You're too deep. There's a time when you guys were rappers, right? And then you guys met Rilo.
Yeah.
She gave the group some soul.
Yeah.
How was that? How was her coming into the group changed the dynamics? Because now the seven Manyora, and you have to deal with a lady, a great lady.
You know, with Squatter Camp, it's different level. I don't think I've ever seen Rilo as a lady. None of us did, actually. If you hear us speak to Rilo, bro, it has programmed the way I relate to people, to women in my life. It reprogrammed it. It's like how I speak to my wife. It's like she's a boy. We call each other bafanas, you know, me and my wife. So when we met Rilo, it wasn't even about, only when she'd introduce herself and say, hi, this is the first lady. That it was like, hi, shut up, you know, like I'm speaking to Slicker. And we look at each other as energy, not as genders, you know. So I feel like when she came into the group, she gave us a different reach. Now it was like a different aspect of reaching out. You know what I mean? Because she gave us a lot of soul, which we had but couldn't interpret it, you know? Or basically transform it into music or translated it into music. We had it in us, but she gave us a different reach because I think the first song Rilo recorded was my song, Ekasi. I had recorded the song, it was done. And I kept on having these melodies in my head, but I can't sing to save my life. I can hold a note and a key, but I can't sing to save my life. And I brought Rilo in studio. She did the song and it changed. I even had to re-record my verses, saying the same thing but with different energy. So that's the kind of stuff that the value she added in the group.
She's amazing.
Incredible, bro. And it's not even about her voice. That's what people don't understand. It's about her presence. And I can't say it was genius for us to bring her on board. It was all God's timing. It was all God's timing.
Dope. So you guys had a 3-contract deal, right?
Yeah.
So the process of these 3 albums,
Yeah.
what transpired? Because I feel like the more money came, the less time in studio, or now you guys are going 1-1 in studio, busy.
Yeah.
And now there's squabbles, obviously.
Yeah.
I was telling the crew earlier that if Liquid Deep, 2 guys can fight and split, you guys, 7 people who held it together for so long. What was the process between these 3 albums?
We don't fight and split, we fight and fight. Like we have those Liquid Deep fights,
Yes.
and then it gets physical. Like really.
Damn.
Yeah. So I think people miss one thing that I said, this thing is life. It's not only music. And there's different aspects of growth in life. There's personal, musical, and we forget the personal part. I go through things that at times doesn't allow me to align the way I used to with the group. So now I've impregnated somebody. I have a responsibility now. I'm not only a rapper, I also have to be a father. While to balance that as an individual, the group is functioning. So do I become an absent father, prioritize the group? The people would be like, you are a mess. If I prioritize the family and spend a bit of time with the group, you are a mess.
What did you decide?
Both. Because they're important, but obviously there has to be some sort of sacrifices there and there. But I'll tell you, the reason why the music softened up, according to what people say, for me, I don't think so, but we're talking reach. You know, when you are a groundbreaker, when you are squatter camp, you need to determine whether other people are going to eat in the next 2 years or not. Now when you've reached 10 people who love hip hop, from that you get opportunities to reach 100. The 100 that you don't know about, or the 90 you don't know about, you know about the 10. They love hip hop, but they don't really understand it. But you see there's a potential of luring them in. Then you give them a bit of what they want for them to turn into hip hop heads. What do? Do you keep the 10 or you risk the 90?
Definitely risk the night.
That's what
Especially when
you
you
had to do. Unfortunately, when you're on the front line, you will take the hits.
Yes.
When the team loses, they say, walaza hakora. But goalkeeper ukorisitse. If you kept a clean sheet, it would be a draw.
Yes.
Then then you can blame me. You know what I mean? So when you're on the front line, bruh, because football is about goals, they will always look at the striker. So Squatter Camp was a striker. Obviously, if there's something wrong, we were going to take a hit. Had we failed to hit gold to open doors for Pro Kid and Double H and all these other people, we were going to get blamed still. So we found a formula that broke that curse and opened up even doors that we didn't even know existed. Still, we are fucked. So you can never win, but as a leader, you have to do what you have to do. But now people are eating. They can say whatever they want, but this is now an industry. We are now talking about it, and now we are having this podcast as a platform to express ourselves. We never even pictured anything of this. The best stage I used to perform in Stupung Sahabo Slekapa with like 20 people there. And that would be like, I wouldn't even fall asleep. I'd be having goosebumps the whole night. I remember while performing Stupung Sahabo Smacks at a gig at Squatter Camp, there were like 100 people. And I saw Chaos go crowd too. Chaos was like the biggest presenter in the country then, Selima Tunzi. I couldn't believe it. I was like, on top of these 100 people, I'm being watched by Chaos. Root Boy Paul was also there. You know, so from that to now Woodstock.
Before even that, from that to Squatter Carnival. Yeah.
Where you have costumes, where you change 4 times. Even rappers are like, you guys are turning soft. You now have costumes, you're changing you are your boy band.
Lime cheese.
But that's what you do to get to the other 90. And now when people are in the other 90, they understand. Because people used to say stuff about Squatter Camp until they're actually in those platforms. Some of them fold, or some of them had to adjust. And now they're like, hey, guys, I didn't know. I get it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Otherwise, you speak different languages.
Yeah.
Because you will say podcast and hip-hop until it becomes successful. Then somebody else starts a podcast and say, Lebonk, akiyawuthola no. Akiyawuthola njak. So, Ruchiga Jwangda.
Sure.
So for you to know Ruchiga Jwangda, you have to experiment. You have to be able to manipulate things, or maybe also like reshape your values. Not necessarily lose yourself, but change certain things. Because hip-hop needed it. For an example, I grew up in the hood and I'm a footballer, bruv. I've always been. My dad was also, I'm from a football and musical family.
You know what? Before you finish your thought, you've been talking about football the whole time.
Yeah.
Now I need to know, have you a signer or a trial somewhere where we thought where you had to choose between hip-hop and football?
I signed the contract, it's about it double thing, you know, like football hurt me. I think if football happened, football is my passion, music is my life. I think because at a young age, you don't understand what your life means or what it is. So the passion came first. Had football became a success, I think music would have suffered. But it's God's grace and God's timing as well. And the path, I'm happy with what I've done and being part of the history books in the music industry. And I'm not glad it never worked, but I was really passionate about it. And I think I'm talented, still am, although I can't sign for Sundowns anymore because I'm 20 years old. But it wasn't to be. I really did my best. I remember moving out of home, Kidula Mitsi, you know. Robala Fatsi, Tlasata Fule, her coach, some of the boys, trying to make this dream a reality. You know, there's moments where my family didn't even know where I was because I went to go Soweto to play a tournament to be recognized. And then they told me there's another tournament tomorrow, another opportunity. So mungarai nagita host out like ila tlatling lori la ka hali mind. Mang in these situations. Remember, we never had phones back in the days. Cell phones, and some of the houses never even had house phones. So I had to sleep there. I'm not back, you know. So those are the things we have to go through. Those are the things that aren't known or aren't made public because they're not cool to talk about. You have to be open. You have to be vulnerable to an extent for you to be able to express it. So people don't know about them, but these are the things we go through in terms of making this dream a reality. So now if I see an opportunity of growing my brand, I won't have double thoughts. I go for it. Being raised in the hood, being raised as a footballer, and in the structures, in the hood, we'd have ciphers. And most of my boys would say, thina sikuzwa mfethu mawulibele ukhuluma abo Agamemnon, Cherichion, and Cilicion, like asikuzwa. So I had to learn, how to say these things in vernac. And now when you say it in vernac, it's critical because you're speaking the language of the people, so you have to relate. They have to relate. So that's how I started making vernac a thing. Because I'm close with my dad, and my dad's like, and my dad's like, yeah. And now I can see, bullshit. You know? So me, I had to like literally be there and be present in moments like, no time, let me write something else. No. And I rap like, yeah, can we akhuluma? Then I'm like, oh, okay, this is where we're failing. Because we're focusing on a niche, but you're trying to grow this thing. You can't dream through a niche. You can't, it's not enough space for you to grow and become your dream. You literally have to lose yourself to gain yourself at times. Sometimes we think we are getting lost and there we are, you know? So it was those type of moments. But like I said, if you are that type of person who's going to bring light, you have to be able to walk through darkness. So people can say whatever they want to say, but if you have it in your heart, that's where the answers are. Keep going. One day they will relate.
Dope. So one of the things that you guys did, we were actually watching you carve through the jungle and shaping up the game, right? And we were about to celebrate the biggest moment of hip-hop at the time, which was a Ludacris feature.
Ooh.
What happened there?
Like I said, there's certain moments in my career where I blacked out because the dream was overwhelming. In detail, I won't even lie to you. I found out much later what exactly happened, you know. Because of it's not even excitement, bro. You know when something keeps you up at night and you like literally flowing, and then the management will have private discussions of how they go about this thing, and then it doesn't happen. Only then you're like, hey, you guys, hey, what's a halang? You know what I mean? But we've also had developed trust, you know, with management. So you never had to look over their shoulders every now and then to see what's going on. You'd be like, they've done a lot for us already, you know, and also the brotherhood allowed it to happen like that, you know. But I feel like maybe had we signed that deal, I would be dead, you know, because like I said, I had moments where I've lost it and I don't know how much I could comprehend, you know, on my personal space. I feel like I'm meant to be here today talking to you about to do what I feel I'm meant to do. So at times, never look at dreams and think they are your reality at all costs. At times, it saves you life, you know, and you still have that life to make those dreams become a reality, probably in a different aspect or different path. So that never happened and it really hit us hard. But for me personally, with what I've done, not only for hip hop, for the youth of the country, I think I've done a lot. And still being here, feeling like this, looking like this, and having this type of energy to can go again. What more can you ask for?
Dope. So there's two things that happened, right? You had one of the most anticipated albums in hip hop.
Yeah.
When it was about to drop, it didn't.
Yeah.
And next thing, you drop a house album.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind?
A lot. I think I mentioned earlier that most of the things are making sense to me, or started making sense to me as I got older. The spiritual realm is one thing I've always struggled with in terms of finding balance with my reality. And like I said, people only know one aspect. You just ask a question about a certain period of my life, but you mentioned one aspect. The other aspect is not communicated. And I think also we are at fault because we're not only killing ourselves, but we're also killing people that we should be informing and educating about these things. Most people in the music industry are spiritual, and at times it doesn't align. And if it doesn't align, you don't get to understand immediately why you keep on trying to open doors. And some of the doors you open, they're not actually your doors, but they will open for you to see that they're not your doors. So that next time you know the second door from the right, I shouldn't open again. So I think I went through that a lot in my life, and I've learned a lot from that. And in terms of that album that had great hype, it was called The Champ.
Yes.
You know, when you have brotherhood and people don't know how you feel, it's the most painful thing in the world. And people will go out there and say things about you on TV or whatever the case is, and it would break your heart because these are your brothers. And these conversations that are being had online or on national TV are the conversations that we normally have in a combi, behind closed doors. So now it gets confusing at times when you're like, why don't you say that to me as brothers, you know? But like, we grow. And I think the biggest aspect of growth is forgiving. If you can't forgive yourself or forgive others, you are stuck in the past. You'll suffer, bruh. You'll keep on carrying hot coal in your head and saying, one day, but it keeps burning you in the process. So you had to let go. I had to let go of some moments or some pain, some disappointments. Also, we're human. They probably felt a certain way about it and I didn't even know. You know, and not knowing means I don't understand. Not understanding means then they have to decide what to do with that information or with that pain. And they decided. Whether I feel it's right or wrong, it's up to me, but also it's up to them what to do with their pain. It was up to me what to do with my pain. I got called to talk about my side of the story, about such things, and I decided, no, I'll talk about that in the combi. But for me, it wasn't about them, it was about my spiritual journey. You know, I'm a very spiritual person, and I feel like that part of my house wasn't in order. I think I probably would have died had that album got released and became successful. It was gonna be successful. Obviously. So maybe now you are in a different wagon, moving very fast, you know, but you're gonna crash. Now I feel like I'm in a proper wagon, carrying proper content. It's a little slow, but it's purposeful and it's righteous. It's taking me exactly where I'm supposed to be. Hence, we're having this conversation. We wouldn't be having it. I'd either maybe be gone or somewhere or something. Because saying something was going to be successful, we don't know. Like, we have cases of like Bolerato Shabang, you know, they took the chance and it worked, but it backfired eventually. So we must see both possibilities. So now I'm a person of faith, and I believe it wasn't. I feel something was saved regarding my
especially
life.
Because you don't remember a lot of things.
Yeah,
it could have been worse.
It's crazy. It's crazy because I think when God creates a human being, He takes away certain qualities that other people can't live without to give certain qualities a balance of what other people don't have, you know? So you maybe lack focus for a reason. Then you're supposed to educate others how to move in certain spaces. The Jabu Pule situation has saved so many lives. The fact that he's here talking about it. He's got a podcast. If you're a podcast that never had those experiences, what content will you be dropping? So we need to be very sober with how we judge our situations so that we can easily forgive ourselves for the wrong things or wrong things we did. At times they are right. At times you are doing something right at the wrong time. You know, at times you are doing something right, you are fucking up for a reason. So that we can sit here and I have this conversation that a young artist at home is listening and saying, I thought it was over. I'm only 20. This guy is 45 years old. He looks like gold. I'm sold.
You do like good. Like, I look fresh, man. I don't want
I appreciate. So I feel like these are good platforms for us to be as transparent as possible. And like having worn the hat and gotten the t-shirt and being everywhere, I'm content with what I've delivered. So I don't have to hold back anything for me to look cool anymore. I feel like I need to live with purpose. And if I have an opportunity, I said to you, I see myself as a vessel of great energy, whether it be medicine or whatever. If I have to heal somebody, I have to get to uncomfortable spots in my body, in my spirit, in my soul, to deliver certain things that will help other people, save lives, you know. And at times you think you're saving one life, but the fact that that life is saved, a lot of lives are going to be saved from it. One tree, it's a diapole tse kae, bro. Maybe it's say 10 a year, but it feel like how long? So you look at that moment like, get probably diapole tse 10. But next year, this thing, September, is already starting its processes, you know. These conversations, if you speak to Momulimi, who's a farmer, he will tell you, don't piss on the soil. Because now it just might look like soil, something you've seen before. But it carries extraordinary responsibilities. So that's how I view myself. I'm the soil, not only in the entertainment industry, but in the universe. I'm here to give life. So I'm not about looking back and looking at what I didn't do or what didn't happen. I'm there to learn from that and deliver it in the present. That's all. Then I'm successful once I do that. Then whether I get blessed for that or not, it's not up to me. I know a lot of people who are talented and they are home. I'm not home. I'm in this podcast right now. I'm moving. So I should be grateful that I still have platforms to can make even impossible dreams that I had in mind possible, you know? So define success as well, your own way. You know, I think when you look at social media right now, there's one definition of success, which is bad for our kids, the new generation. Define your own success, bro. Maybe your capital is not, maybe your currency is not dollars or money, period. Maybe you have wealth that you were born with. You don't even have to accumulate. You just need to learn how to convert it into a different energy, which is probably money. And yet you are chasing money, leaving this thing behind. Momulimi's got land, right?
Yes, sir.
Did he have money?
No, sir.
Do the math.
So, Boma, a while back, I was with this distinguished gentleman who is amazing in emceeing, and 5 days later, I woke up and he passed. I couldn't understand. Like, I couldn't process it. How was Flowers passing to you? How did you find out? Where were you?
I think it redefined depression. First of all, he used to joke. We were very harsh, you know, with our humor towards each other. He used to call me Nyumba, Nyumba, Kinyup. You know, like, hey, kunini inyumba. Fanele uze la Alex ngizokupayita. Khona omunye ubaba lapho upayitayo. Never. So nangaki, you know? And my wife at the time was pregnant when we lost Flabba. And I haven't told him the news because, you know, as black people, we are also a little superstitious in our spirituality. So the first 3 months, you don't speak much. So I was waiting for that moment. And just a week before he passed. To say the least, bruh, you listen to my verse, his tribute song. There you go. It says, give it to me, Nana. Do you remember it? Oh, she can't hear me. It speaks about ingosi yami ayikwazi but ngibona ngikhala futhi.
That's deep.
You know what I mean? Ingosi yami ayikwazi but ngibona ngikhala futhi. You know? Because my daughter experienced it. And like, now if you ask my daughter about Flabba, she'll tell you everything. Because I had to. Like, Kanti, who's this guy? I understand he's one of you guys, but like, Baba, come on, you know? So, for me, it got confusing because we were also chasing a huge dream, me and him. A lot of people were like, yabona kuskwara camp, poza no Flabba. You know, and he'd say to me, Njaya Masambi. We were busy in studio with Robbie Malinga and Jake Stebe, the guys who did Zahara and Ando, Brown Dash, and, you know. We've got a song called Samba Nabo, and Speaker also was waiting for us. We had a lot to do, bro. Again, that didn't happen. Then I say, the album, The Champ, didn't happen. This is not happening. Kinali bad. But then Flabba lost his life, and I still have mine. So now you sit there, you think, whether we go toilet or what driver, then you think, what does this mean? I still have my life. This nigga doesn't have his life anymore. I'm still here with my daughter, even though I cry every now and then, you know, and she doesn't understand. I can make her understand. Can he make his daughter understand his situation?
It's just a complicated situation.
So, bruh, it's a journey to date, bruh. You know, yesterday we were performing his song with Kwesta, Do Like I Do. I always feel his presence, and not to say I have to hold it back, but you also have to perform. Once you allow a bit of it, it might just happen that you break down and you don't deliver. And people pay money. So you also have to balance with the business mind and say, hey, Flabba, emanya, Rosa, Wabo. But I feel it all the time, bro. And it gets to me all the time. So those moments after performances, and especially because we've decided to perform that particular song, that verse before Umoya, it's right at the end. And you need to have a moment to come down. You know, it's really, I used to think it's hard, but I said, then I'm still given an opportunity to feel him. Why am I complaining? If it was just blank moments after blank moments, even in my thoughts or in my body, feeling him in my body, I should be appreciative, because many people dream to have that particular moment at that level, in depth, you know, and I feel it all the time. So I really appreciate it, but having to draw myself out of that moment is hard. And at the same time, you meet fans, they want to take pictures. You struggle to balance, you know, but it's life, and I chose this thing. At times I have to find ways, at times I have to make ways to deal. So life goes on.
Before we close, how do I okay, I know what to do. What are you working on now? In fact, before you tell us, the track that you performed,
Yeah.
Arisimula, the show, what's the track about?
It's my dad's favorite hymn, you know, and my wife took me to a gig that had Joe Thomas and Anthony Hamilton, and I didn't want to go because I was still in studio, and I'm an energy person, so I like having a tunneled vision and focusing on what I do with all my soul. So like going there, meeting people, maybe like having a drink would change how I feel about things. And only to find that Nikki Tsweri that time. So I didn't want to go. And my wife is quite spiritual as well. And she said to me, I think there's something for you there. She has said it a lot of times and I didn't listen a lot of times and I got burnt. So I decided, dang, I gotta go. I went. And everything was normal, you know, meeting people, we're taking pictures. Everything was just normal. Also watching the shows, not to get entertained, but to learn. Okay, the performance is like this is how they escalated to this level and whatever. And then boom, T-Boz played, and he played a gospel set. And you know when somebody's mixing and you're a DJ, you can tell when the song is coming from afar. Dude, my body changed. You know, I could feel something brewing inside of me. And I had to listen, and it was the song. Instantly, I had to stand in a way that allows me, position myself in a way that allows me to see the whole arena. So people took out their phones and started waving the phones, lighting them up and waving them in the air and singing along. I had goosebumps. I couldn't move for probably like 10 seconds. I had tears in my eyes. Thought of my dad. But I knew there and then I had to still be present somehow. So what I did, which was very smart, took out my phone and recorded the moment because then it will allow me to process it afterwards. I tell you, I was there for probably 2 hours after that, or 3, but I was non-existent there. I was busy in studio, busy in gigs, busy in podcasts. I was just visualizing this dream, like, okay, I thought I was working on something. Now something is working on me. Which is what I think purpose is. At times we are scared of being driven. We want to drive ourselves. And it's not about us. We think we are way too important in this process of living. We make ourselves central. It's bigger than you. It's always bigger than you. Life will keep shocking you and shocking. At times it will repeat similar instances that hurt you for you to wake up, and you don't want to wake up because you think it happened before. So this time when it happens, I'm going to do this. And then you find you meet it the other side again. That's why when you keep on messing up the same way, the same mistake occurs in different times and in different forms. So I've learned to let go and accept, you know, what should be. And I went to studio with that video. Promised myself, and I'm very stubborn when it comes to creating what speaks to me internally, that I want this energy. I don't care how it sounds. I want the energy because it healed me there and there and it moved me. I want to move somebody. I want to take this energy from where it was and put it pilung ya somebody, or bophelong ba somebody, or in somebody's spirit or soul. You know what I mean? The way I felt it. And I went to studio with that and that only. And thank God I executed it. And now when I listen to the song, when I play the song to people, they say exactly that. It's like a different generation of creation, being able to combine two worlds and create a new one that you can't recognize both anymore, and they gel so well together. And I'm grateful. Like, again, it was my vision, but it was instilled. It wasn't all my doing. So that's what I'm doing right now. That I have visions that were brought to me. I'm just there to execute them. And I feel much lighter doing that. I play football, and hearing people after games where they say, hey, khona la uthathe le 3 le omunye wawa, and you don't remember that moment. Because if you are spiritual with the way you do things, you stay in a trance. Now when you ask me, the moments that's what I can, some moments I don't remember because I was being carried. I watch Sipho Mbule play now and I'm thinking, what the hell? You know, how? He's the slowest. You know, but it's almost like he had played the game, watched it over and over again and placed himself and say, long and the way he does it, it's almost like, what now? Yeah, it's like, long you know, it's like a PlayStation, like playing, I don't know, it's, you know, but that's the thing about allowing yourself to be and not being paranoid about the results. Mangalbamba, ngal loser. It's none of your business. Ilbambi. You know what I mean? Ilbambi. That's it. So that's where I'm at right now. That's what I'm doing. Ilbambi.
Now, ubamba ama singles or ubamba album?
Album. You know, ngbamba the purpose, ngbamba the dream, ngbamba the vision. I've recorded so many songs. I've got songs with Spikiri. I've got songs with one of the most young, talented producers right now, I think, who works with Gigi Lamayne, Vuga M Beats. I've got my boy Oza and Phakathi Khatebe. We've created insane stuff. I've got a lot of songs. I can literally release an album, Kako Rapas, you know, but this song came up when I felt I was done. So I don't know what else. Maybe while watching this episode, something else. So I'm that matured right now that I'm content with the happenings and myself and my positioning and my shape, you know, the way I feel, the way I look, the way I walk, the way I do things. I'm content. So I don't worry about what's about to happen, or I'm just worrying about me being my best self right now. So it's very difficult for me and would be very naive for me to start talking about my future. I'm intentional with what I'm doing, but I've got volumes and volumes of work, you know. But right now, it's about this moment, about this song. And it's so relevant because I feel like the country is Sodom and Gomorrah. So, like I said, my dad is a philosopher of note because we've had this conversation and that was his favorite song. But that time, we weren't there yet. And he was intentional about those conversations. Now they are making sense because they're happening and he's no longer here. So I feel like now I have to be in his shoes with his voice and say this in his words. So that's what I'm doing. That's the moment I'm in.
Thank you so much for coming through, man. You are the one guy that I look, every time I go phone, same guy, like I said earlier. And for taking time out, 8 a.m. on a Sunday after a gig means a lot to me. I really, really appreciate it. Where do we find you? Insta, TikTok, a lot of Umudi social thing?
Kimodi social thing. I'm on TikTok as Boza from Squatter Camp. Facebook, Nkosana Boza Nkosi. Twitter, Boza the Champ. Instagram, Boza the Champ. Kikontlu Happy, you know, where my kids can find me, and I'm grateful for that. But I'll be everywhere where you are. Taxi ranks, malls, stop signs, robots. I'll literally be everywhere, you know. And yeah, I appreciate you, my brother, and I love you. It's the reason why I came here. Just about being transparent, and you've always been that person. You've always been a safe space. These kind of conversations don't just happen. They happen when you're with grades. When you're sharing great information with grades, you stay vulnerable. You stay open. You don't worry about anything. If this episode is not edited and put out the way it is, I'm good. You know, it's just about being with the right people. That's all that matters to me. Thank you.
Ladies and gents, Boza.
Okay, that's enough.